In the 16th and 17th century, Plymouth Town paid for the burying of the dead poor and paid compensation for fumigation, burning bedding, and the cost of isolation. The burning of a nigger on Catterdown and the removal of Malato, which lay about the street, shows the coloured men were not uncommon. Indeed, the St. Andrew's registers show several men and women as servants, and a number of births are recorded. Helen, daughter of Christian, the Negro, servant of Richard Shearer, the supposed father being Cuthbert Holman, 2nd of May, 1593. Christian, daughter of Mary, a Negro of John White's, and the supposed daughter of John Kinge, a Dutchman, 17th of November, 1594. Fortunus, son of a Negro of Thomas Keguins, the supposed father being a Portugal, 24th of December, 1594. Susan, daughter of a blackamoor, 1st July, 1596. Catherine, daughter of Don Pedro, a bastard nigger, 4th of October, 1596. Richard, son of Mary, a nigger, the reputed father, Roger Haugot, 23rd of June, 1603.
Travellers say the A38 and A5 are the main gypsy roads, and describe regularly stopping their wagons in Plymouth when they were following other gypsies to an agreed destination but did not know the way. The leading wagon would leave markers at turnings, either a broken stick or torn grass.
In 1863, there is newspaper coverage of a black man who had served as a hangman in Gibraltar and was jailed in Plymouth for resisting a policeman who approached him when leaning against a shop window. The case is reported humorously, as though the man himself is a living stereotype. John Thomas, alias Little Jack, an African as black as your hat, and whose features formed a strange contrast with a white smock frock which he had on, was charged with assaulting the police in the execution of their duty on the previous evening. P.C. Wills stated that on the previous evening he was on duty in Fore Street and saw him leaning against a shop window. He told him to go on, but he would not do so. The constable then put his hand upon his shoulder to force him on, when the defendant struck him in the face. He was taken into custody and locked up. The defendant was intoxicated and greatly resisted the police. The defendant, in defence, contended that the policeman had first assaulted him and he did not obstruct the policeman in the execution of his duty. Mr. Superintendent Lynn stated that some time ago he was at Gibraltar, in prison, there for stabbing a soldier in the back. A man having to be hung there, the defendant obtained his liberty by officiating as hangman, and then came to England. He said he had claimed of £20 on the government and was endeavouring to get it, but had no prospect of succeeding. He came to Devonport and tried to get on board HMS London, but they would not accept him, and he is now lurking about the streets of this town. The bench sentenced him to 14 days' imprisonment.
14 days?
Yes.
Very well, I don't care. Here I goes, off to the land of Dixie.
There was loud laughter in the court.
The Grand Gazetteer of 1759 describes Plymouth as follows. "'Tis too much overstocked with inhabitants new come from Ireland, Cornwall, and other parts, and gathered flocks of females charitably inclined to solace moneyed sailors in distress. The true Plymothians are in the main as polite, genteel, religious, and worthy a people as those enjoyed by any other place."
From the 1720s to the 1770s, Plymouth Dock grew from almost nothing to half the population of Plymouth. Where did these people come from? While specialist skilled craftsmen may have come from far afield in the UK, unskilled labour mainly came from the countryside. Between 1815 to 1914, Plymouth's population grew from 56,000 to 201,000. In the main, it was from immigration. In 1861, there was a population of 90,000, of which 13,500 were born in Cornwall, 4,000 born in Ireland, and 3,000 born in London. Many more would have been born in the villages of Devon.
Here is a story of a man, travelling from London, who ends up in the Devonport workhouse in 1863. Unsatisfied with what is provided him in the workhouse, he destroys his clothes in the hope of being given better. He is then sent to prison. On his release, he repeats his behaviour. Andrew Wilson, a man between 30 and 40 years of age, and of very disreputable and ragged appearance, was charged with tearing up his clothes by Mr. Griselier, governor of Devonport workhouse. The governor stated that on the previous morning he was informed that the defendant, who had been taken into the house the day before as a vagrant, had torn up his clothes. He went to him in his ward and saw his clothes in a bundle of rags, and the prisoner lying in the bed covered with some rugs. He asked the defendant what he had torn up his clothes for, and he said he had torn them up because they would not last 2 days longer. The bench. Why did you tear up your clothes? The defendant. Because I wished to get better. The defendant said he had left London, where he belonged, to seek for work, which he had been unable to get through ill health. The bench sentenced him to prison for 7 days.
Had I lived in Devon in the 5th, 6th or early 7th centuries, I would have been an ultra-conservative Dumnonian, deeply disapproving of developments taking place further east, where people with Germanic or part Germanic roots held increasing power. Had I lived here in the later 7th or 8th centuries as Briton or Saxon, I would have been loyal to my own culture but open to interaction. If British, particularly aware of the advantage and increasingly the necessity of learning and speaking English. Had I lived here in the 9th to early 11th centuries, regardless of my ancestry, I would have defended English Christian society against Scandinavians, who were often pagans, heartily subscribing to the strengthened notion of English nationhood fostered by King Alfred and his successors. Had I lived here in the 11th century as a member of this early nation-state, I would have supported the anti-Norman rebellion of 1067-69, loyal to a strong sense of English local community focused on the Shire and on the city of Exeter. My hypothetical ancestors' evolving attitudes would, I think, in these ways have been a microcosm of Devonian social origins.